Hi, I'm Hannah. Welcome to Pilates by Hannah. In today's video, I want to have a look at something that has absolutely changed the way that I live, and it's hip mobility. Now, most of us who work office jobs, I've had an office job for years before this, I had such tight hips. My hip flexors were just weak and tight, and the whole joint capsule just felt like it was rigid. There was no mobility. When I started looking into hip mobility, I was sort of introduced to the world of like somatic healing and the fact that your hips hold so many emotions. And for loads of people, when they do hip mobility work, it just releases all of these emotions. So I started doing it. I felt the actual physical benefits of improving my hip mobility, but the emotional as well. Honestly, the first time I did some of these exercises, I just burst into tears. Couldn't explain it. And then I obviously found out why. So many of you have been asking for a hip mobility routine, so I thought I'd give it a go today. This is what I do. I'm by no means a somatic healer. I'm not qualified in any somatic movements, but just through my own research and through my own Pilates work, yoga work, this is a routine that I found has really, really helped. So let's get into it. So the first thing that we're going to do today is we're just going to lie on our backs in the middle of our mat. And I want us to just at first tap into our breath. So let's just think about our alignment for a minute. We're going to be lying on our backs. Let's just put our hands down onto the mat. Palms just pressing into the mat. Our feet, we want hip distance apart. Our knees tracking in line with our hips, pointing up to the ceiling. Moving up to our hips, we want to make sure that we're lying here in a neutral spine. So to do this, we're just going to take some pelvic tilts. So just tuck your tailbone and feel your lumbar spine pressing into the mat. And then reverse that movement, pushing your tailbone into the mat, feeling that pocket of air growing underneath your lumbar spine. I'm going to take a few more tilts here, so compress that pocket of air, pull that tailbone under, and reverse it, expanding that pocket of air. Now our neutral spine is sort of a midway point between these two tilts. You want to have a slight pocket of air underneath your lumbar spine, almost as if you could just pass a piece of paper through there. Our ribs, we want to make sure that they're nicely knitted together. They're not flared up with our chest open. Just make sure they're compressed in, knitting together. Shoulders, let's just draw them down away from the ears, feeling our shoulder blades pressing into the mat. And make sure you've got an equal weight across your left and right shoulder blade. Tuck your chin slightly to create some length down the back of your neck. And feel the crown of your head just being pulled long. Our spine is just one long line. We're going to think about our breath here. So we're going to take an inhale through the nose, filling up the lungs, feeling your ribs opening up as your lungs fill with air. We're going to breathe out through pursed lips. Imagine you're blowing out a candle on the ceiling. As you expel all the air from your lungs, feel your ribs just knitting together even more. We're going to take a few breaths here just to ground the body and introduce some movement. Now you'll be able to feel when you exhale, your core starts knitting together and engaging. Your pelvic floor is drawing up towards your belly button, and your transverse abdominals at your side are just pulling into that center point. So really think about that on your next exhale. We'll just take 2 more breaths here. Now let's start bringing some movement into the body. I'm going to just drop into some windscreen wipers now. So take an inhale, and as you exhale, drop both your knees over to the left-hand side of the body. Don't feel like you need to get down to the mat. Just go as far as comfortable for you as we're warming up. And then go over to the right-hand side. And just flow through left and right. When you drop over to one side, you want to make sure that your shoulders are still pressed firmly into the mat. You're going to want to lift your opposite shoulder to try and increase your motion, but don't. The end goal is not getting your knees down to the mat. It's just bringing some movement into the lower body, some rotation. Make sure you're maintaining that neutral spine here. It's easy to feel your lumbar spine lifting away from the mat. Just really think about keeping that really tiny pocket of air under the lumbar spine. Just do one more each side now. And then rise back up to that starting point. Just take a few pelvic tilts. Just release those back muscles. And then just find stillness on the mat. Next thing we're going to do is bring in some shoulder bridges. So we're going to start by tucking our tailbone as we did with those pelvic tilts. And as you tuck, keep tucking, engage your glutes as you feel your tailbone and the bottom of your spine lifting off the mat. You want to lift up each vertebrae at a time. Get to about halfway lift. Take a pause at this top. Take an inhale and then exhale. And one by one, rolling each vertebrae back down to the mat. We're going to go again here. So take an inhale, exhale, tuck that tailbone, engage those glutes and those hamstrings as you lift up vertebrae by vertebrae to the top. You can go slightly higher here as we warm up, but don't go to your full top point. Take an inhale and exhale. Unroll that vertebrae, that spine. We'll take one more now. So take an inhale. As you exhale, tuck the tailbone, engage the glutes and the hamstrings, lifting up off the mat, almost uncurling yourself like a snake. When you're at your top point, just hold, glutes engaged, hamstrings engaged. And exhale, rolling back down. Nice. Now from here, we're just going to roll over onto your side, bring yourself up to seated, and then we're going to find our all fours position. When we're on all fours, we want to make sure our fingers are spread wide, pressed into the mat, our hands shoulder width apart, our shoulders stacked directly over our elbows, directly over our wrists. One long line down the arm. For our lower body, we want our feet hip distance apart, tops of the feet just naturally placed on the mat, knees stacked directly under the hips with a nice 90-degree angle between your limbs. Now here, we're just going to take some of those small pelvic tilts again. Just warming up the spine and warming up the hips and the pelvis. These are just really small movements. And then find stillness in that neutral spine. We're going to start with some hip circles. So you want to have your weight over into your right knee, and you're going to lift your left leg off the mat. And we're just going to start by bringing the knee out away from the body and just drawing some circles with that left knee. I'm very cracky today. If you have clicks and cracks, don't worry. Now start with just small, slow circles. Make sure you keep the rest of your body really nice and still here. We just want to isolate this movement to the hip. We don't want to be compensating the movement in the other parts of the body. It's really easy to push over to the right, which gives you so much movement in that hip, but we don't want to do that. Stay strong through your right hand side and just isolate that left leg and that left hip. When you've done a few on that side, just swap direction. You may find that one direction is much easier than the other. Again, just nice and slowly, making those circles slightly bigger as the hip joint warms up. We'll do one more here. Then you can plant that left knee. We're going to do the same on the other side. So weight into the left knee, lifting the right off the mat. Just start drawing those circles with the right knee. Again, starting small, just introducing some small movements into this hip joint. Staying strong through the shoulders, keeping your spine and your pelvis as still as you can. And when you've done a few in that direction, just swap the direction. And then we'll just do one more here. And then we're going to plant that right leg onto the mat. So our next movement, we're going to stay in this 4-point kneeling. We're going to take an inhale here. And as we exhale, we're going to extend our left leg out towards the mat, the back of the mat. We're going to move our left leg, cross it behind our right leg, planting our toes on the mat. You're going to take your gaze over your right shoulder, looking towards your left foot. Now you'll feel a really nice stretch down the left-hand side of your body here. Just creating length all the way down the side of your neck, the side abdominals, down, pushing your weight through that left heel. Bring your head back to neutral, the center point of the mat. Lift the toes, lift your left toes off the mat, sweeping your left leg up behind you. Plant it on the mat, plant it on the floor next to you, sort of in line with your hip if you can. And then we're going to sink our hips back into a child's pose as our left leg is extended. You're going to feel a really nice stretch down the inside of your leg here. If this is too much for you, you can just bring your left leg slightly further back, which will minimize, which will reduce that load through the left joint and the left, which will reduce the load, which will reduce the stretch through that left leg. And then we're going to rise up. We're going to lift our left leg off the mat, cross it over again behind our right leg, planting our toes on the floor, gaze over the right shoulder through to that foot. Again, feeling that stretch down the left side of the body. We're going to lift the left toes, crossing the left leg back, planting it back on the floor in line with our hips, and sinking our hips back into that child's pose, left leg extended. Just take some deep breaths here as you feel that stretch down the inside of the left leg. We're going to rise back up, and we're going to do that one more time. So lifting your left leg, passing it behind the body, planting the toes, gaze over the right shoulder, pushing your weight down through that left heel. Feel if you can push even more weight through your heel. Now that the body's just warming up, we can get deeper into that stretch. Just take some deep breaths here. Bring your head back to the center of the mat, lifting that left leg, crossing it back, planting it on the mat, sinking the hips back. If you want, you can just walk your arms out further away from the body to deepen that upper body stretch. Lift back up, just bring that left leg back to the mat. Do the same on the right side. So plant our weight through our left knee, take an inhale, and as we exhale, extend our right foot to the end of the mat. Lifting up that right foot, crossing it behind us, planting the toes on the mat, taking your gaze over your left shoulder, down to that right foot. Feeling that stretch through the right side of the body. We're going to bring our head back to the middle, lifting your right foot, bringing it back behind you, planting it on the floor, out in line with your hips, and sinking your hips back into that child's pose with your right leg extended. Feeling that stretch down the inside of your right leg. And we'll rise up, lifting our right leg, crossing it back behind us, planting the toes, gaze over the left shoulder, through that foot. Start pressing your weight into that right heel, just deepening the stretch down the right side of the body. Bring your head back to the center, lifting that right foot, passing it round to the right side, planting it in line with the hips, and sinking the hips back. Just breathe into this stretch. Lifting up, and we'll just do that one more time. So lifting the right leg, passing it behind us, planting the toes, gaze over the left shoulder down to that foot, pressing the weight through that right heel, stretching out, feeling that length down the right hand side of your neck, down the body, all the way out to that heel. Bring your head back to center, lifting that right leg, passing it back, planting it on the mat in line with the hip, sinking the hips back, and just walk your hands out away from the body, creating space in the shoulders. Just exhale as you get deeper into that stretch. We'll lift up, walk our hands in, and bring that knee back to the mat, to our all fours. Now, from here, what we're going to do is we're going to walk our knees out to about the distance of the mat, further if you feel like you've got more flexibility in those hips. And then we're going to flex our feet. Bring your shins sort of in line with the sides of your mat. And then all we're going to do here is just sink our hips back, coming down onto your forearms into this frog pose. Now you're going to feel this on the insides of your thighs. We don't want to be going 100% into the stretch. We're just going to start at about 50% here, holding that stretch. If that's too much for you, bring your knees in closer together and just don't sink down as deep. Now we're just going to rock our weight forward onto our hands, lessening that stretch. Take an inhale and exhale. Sink your hips back into that stretch. Now it's really important that we can just ground ourselves in this stretch and find a point that's comfortable for the body. You don't want your legs to be screaming at you here. You just want to find a point that's comfortable to hold. And we're just going to stay here for a few breaths. And then we're going to rock our weight forward, coming out of that stretch. Take an inhale. And this is the point where if you want to readjust your knees, do so. If you want to bring them closer together to lessen the stretch, do that. If you want to drop them further apart, then do that. We're going to do one more drop back here. So take an inhale and exhale. Sink the hips back, deepening that stretch again. We're going to hold this for another breath. Roll your weight forward. Just walk your knees back in. Keep your feet together, bring your knees wide, and we're just going to sink down into that child's pose. Feeling the body, just relax. Give your upper body, your shoulders and your head a bit of a sway side to side if you want here. Now walk your hands into your body. Just come up onto your hips. Now, what we're going to do is come to your seated position with your feet out in front of you. And we're going to bring both of our legs to a 90 degree. So take your right knee, bring it out in line with your hip, away from your body. Your foot, your shin and your foot running parallel to your mat. Your left leg is going to come out with your thigh directly in front of you, shin parallel to your other foot on the edge of the mat, like so. I'll just turn around and show you what it looks like from the front, but you just stay exactly where you are. Right leg out at a 90 degree, left leg out in front of you at a 90 degree, shins parallel. Now from here, what we're going to do is think about some internal and external hip rotation. So taking our right knee, we're going to plant our right foot on the floor and just start lifting your right knee up away from the mat. You won't be able to get very far, I'd imagine, but just stay strong through your body, lifting your right knee up. We'll just do a few here. This is just opening up that hip joint. Bring your knee back to the mat, just find stillness there. Walk your hands out, bring your right hand to the right side of your foot and your left hand just by your knee. We're going to start sweeping the body over that front knee. Now you're going to feel this into your left hamstring and into your left hip. We just want to create some movement over this front left leg. Now you can change the direction. If you find a sticking point, you can just stay there. Just work yourself across it. But you'll probably find that as you warm up, you can get lower down over that left leg. And we're going to find stillness here. If you're feeling comfortable in this position, you can even bring your hands, your forearms to the mat in front of that left shin. And just fold over. We're going to hold this for a few breaths here. And we're going to walk the hands back into the body, lifting up, sitting up nice and tall, shoulders drawn down away from the ears, crown of the head, lifting up tall to the ceiling. Now we're going to swap our 90 degrees here. So our right leg is going to come in front of the body and our left leg is going to come out to the side. Again, just adjust yourself so you're comfortable. We're going to start by lifting that left knee. So planting that left foot into the mat, just lifting that right knee up away from the mat. Slow movements, opening up that hip capsule. Now you may find that your right knee wants to lift up. If that's happening, which it is on my case, put your right hand on top of your right knee to just remind you to press that right knee into the mat as your left knee lifts off. This will just deepen that stretch and stop your body compensating to try and expand that range of motion. Just do a few more here. And then find stillness, and we're going to walk our hands out again just to frame that front leg. And we're going to go back into our circles. Sweeping the body left to right, circling up and down over that front leg. Bringing the movement into that right hip, through the glute and the hamstring. And again, if you find a sticking point, just stay there and just work into it slightly. And then change the direction of your circles. And then find stillness. And either stay here or bring your forearms to the mat in front of your leg and just fold. And just breathe into that stretch. And then we can walk the hands back into the body, restack the spine, sitting tall, shoulders drawn down away from the ears, crown of the head up tall to the ceiling. Now we can untwist our legs. We're going to bring our feet out in front of us. So bring your feet in together, knees out wide, and just get comfortable on your seat bones here. Now you can either have your hands on your knees, holding onto your ankles, or onto your toes. But at the moment, we're just sitting here, finding length through our spine, crown of the head up tall to the ceiling, shoulders drawn down away from the ears, ribs knitted together. Just coming back into that breath, inhaling, feeling the lungs expanding, and exhaling to expel the air from the lungs, blowing out that candle in front of us. Now we can start by just taking some micro pulses of the knees, really small pulses up and down, opening up the hip joints. Just bouncing them up and down. Then we're going to find stillness. We're going to start introducing a forward fold movement here. So think about bringing the head forward towards the front of your mat, reaching your head as far over your toes as you can. Try and keep a nice flat back here. We're not trying to get our head down to our feet because that just compresses the whole body. I want to keep a nice flat back, reaching our head forwards. We're just going to hold here. I like to keep my hands on my toes here. It's just a comfortable position to be, but find a comfortable position for you and hold that. You don't want to be pulling yourself down with your hands either. They are simply just resting there. And again, keep your shoulders drawn down away from your ears, which is going to encourage keeping that flat back. The minute you let them rise up, you'll tend to hunch over and create a rounding of the spine. Just keep it flat. We're just going to hold here, and as you go into each breath, just see if you can drop slightly further into that stretch, bringing your head forward, your spine straight. Think about hinging from the hips here. And then we're going to lift back up into that stacked spine. And you may just want to shuffle your legs forward and your body forward. And then we're going to roll back down until we're lying on the mat with our feet in that same position. Hands, you can either have them on the mat, you can bring them onto your hips or onto your thighs, wherever's comfortable. Now we're going to take a few pelvic tilts here, just so we find that neutral spine. When we've got our hips open like this, it's very easy to want to drop drop our tailbone and lift the spine away from the mat, arching the back. But we don't want that. We want to maintain our neutral spine. Once you've found that neutral spine, just lie here, focusing on the breath, letting gravity pull each knee down closer to the mat. Don't force them. Don't try and pull down, because that will actually work against you. Just let gravity do its job. Just slow your breath as you let your knees part. Take one more breath here. Bring your hands back to the mat. Just push yourself back up to that seated position. We're going to open up our legs into a nice wide V. Bring your feet just slightly wider than the mat. Again, just reshuffle onto a comfortable point of your sit bones. Hands, you can just bring them onto the tops of your thighs or your knees, wherever's comfortable. Lifting up, tall to the ceiling. Bring your hands to the mat in front of you. We're just going to walk the hands out towards the front of the mat. Again, trying to keep that long, straight spine. Shoulders drawn down away from the ears, shoulder blades pulling into each other. It's going to help us keep that straight spine. Then you can walk your hands over to the left side of the mat, bringing them over onto your leg if that's comfortable. Just stretching here. Again, don't round your back and collapse down to your leg. Keep that nice long spine, gaze towards your left toes. And then we can walk your hands back through center and over to the right side. Just stretching here. Walking our hands back to center, just seeing if you can drop slightly further. Again, think of the hinge as coming from the hips, keeping your spine nice and straight. We're going to walk the hands back into the body, sit up tall, take a nice big shoulder roll here. Drawing your shoulders down away from the ears, pulling the shoulder blades back into each other. Bring your legs together. And then from here, we're just going to lie down. Find a comfortable position here. We're just going to ground the body, coming back into the breath. We're just going to do a nice body scan. So starting with our feet, just relaxed out to the side slightly. Knees tracking in line with the feet. Hips should really be feeling nice and warmed up, open. They've had a good rotation. Ribs again, knitted together. Shoulders drawn down away from the ears. Shoulder blades pressed down into the mat. Chin slightly tucked for that length down the back of the neck. Crown of the head pulling tall all the way out to the back of the room. We're just going to take some deep breaths here. We've done a lot of work in the hips, and for some people, they store a lot of emotion there. So just let whatever emotion is coming out now, just be with it. We'll take one more breath. And in your own time, find your way back up to seated in the middle of your mat. Thank you so much for joining me for that hip mobility. I know that I feel so much better when I incorporate just a few of those exercises into my daily routine. Give it a go. Let me know if you enjoyed it.